It's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, are we ready for war? Now, a top NATO military official has warned that civilians must prepare for an all-out war with Russia in the next 20 years. Now, this, of course, comes as America and the European generals fear that the UK is no longer a top-level fighting force, as it's been reported that the army will have fewer than 70,000 soldiers. I think that they said soon there'll only be about 50,000, and that's within 2 years. So what do you think for the Great British Debate this hour? I'm asking, are we ready for war? Well, joining me now is political theorist and fellow at the MCC Budapest, Ralph Schoellhammer, former Labour MP Stephen Pound, former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, and former Head of Counterterrorism and the MOD, Chapman. Chip, I'm going to start with you. Chip, are we ready for war?
Well, the first question you need to ask is, what's our fight tonight capability? Against whom and where? So is Russia prepared for war against us, and is it going to go to war with us now? Now, patently, the answer to that is no, because 90% pre-22 capability has been degraded. The where is probably most likely in the Baltics.
Oh, Chip, I thought you, there you go, he's gone. Well, that's all right, because we've got Charlie. I'm going to go for Charlie Rowley now. You're a former Special Advisor to Michael Gove. Charlie Rowley, are we ready for war?
Well, thanks very much. I mean, you talked about the figures at the top there, the number of armed forces in terms of personnel, boots on the ground coming from 70,000 to about 50,000. I think, look, there is still a role for boots on the ground clearly to be made. We're seeing that in Ukraine. We're seeing that when you're taking the fight to the Houthis. But the question is, what kind of war are we going to be facing when it comes to intelligence, when it comes to our technology, when it comes to disinformation? I think we are probably better equipped than most. So it's a question about what kind of war you think we're going to be facing, whether it's one that's going to be dealt with intelligence and technology versus the number of boots on the ground.
It's interesting, though, that you mention other people, because people, you know, Chip was saying that the others aren't ready, and you're saying that we're better equipped than most. Can we really be comparing ourselves to others when we need to be focusing on whether we can actually do this or not? Ralph Schoellhammer, what do you think?
Well, I would say a country that has to discuss whether or not you can sing Rule Britannia is not prepared for any kind of war. It's, I think, very straightforward. We know that even in Great Britain, recruitment numbers are not met. There's a serious problem all over the West. People are no longer willing to die and fight for their country. And just as a reminder, what everyone thinks about Russia in general, I remember very clearly that 2 years ago, we were told that the Russian economy, the Russian war machine is going to collapse within the next couple of weeks. And now all of a sudden we talk about the 20 years war with Russia. So somebody was wrong at some point, and I think we need to take a hard, cold look into the mirror.
That's a good point, actually. I mean, is Chip back? Because I want to bring him back in. But actually, oh, yeah, you are. Did you... No, I just noted Ralph's point there, that a lot of people were saying that about Russia, about other things. They said that the ruble would crumble, and yet it didn't in this current war.
No one has really said that, and if Russia believes this to be an existential war for the Ruski Mir, the Russian world, then they'll continue to fight until that time. Russia does have problems. It won't be able to expand its war to other countries, the Baltics or Poland, until it is successful and can regenerate both its personnel and equipment. So Russia isn't likely to do that in a conventional sense for the next 5 to 10 years. That doesn't mean it wouldn't use hybrid operations, including deception, propaganda, subversion, using complete idiots to try and subvert the Western system. We see that through the use of propaganda in the social media sphere.
But Russia isn't the only worry for us. I mean, we've got all the stuff that's going on with the Houthis and Iran. Stephen Pound.
Yeah, today there are 90,000 people in prison in England and Wales. The entire strength of the Royal Navy, the entire strength is just about 30,000. I'm sorry, I don't care what you say. We cannot re-equip and re-up in time that we could. Don't forget, in 1937, 38, 39, rearmament was considered to be a terrible thing. There's actually by-elections against rearmament. And we managed to increase the military capability very quickly. We can't do that nowadays. What we have to do is prepare for war, but pray for peace.
Because we were even talking about we didn't have the personnel to go onto the new ships that we'd built. So that's
the Type 45. She's been mothballed before she's been launched.
Charlie, what's your view then? Because we didn't have enough personnel for the ships. We're struggling to recruit people to join the army itself. The numbers are coming down. And even if, as you said, the type of war has changed and it's not necessarily boots on the ground, we still do need personnel. I mean, you've seen the wars that are currently happening in Gaza and Russia. Lots of people are needed.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, the risk that I think people are talking about is the kind of war that, again, that you're sort of seeing in Russia in terms of Ukraine and what you're seeing in terms of Houthi on the ground. If you have our opponents who have not got the technology or haven't got the resource but do have the numbers, and if it does become about a numbers of game, if it does become, combat between man to man, woman to woman on the ground, then, of course, the UK would be not as advanced as some of our opponents. But it's the hopeful, as kind of what Stephen was saying, the praying for peace, but the hopeful step that we would take is that we would join forces with our allies like US, like Australia, through that the Five Eyes, through the AUKUS group that we've just announced a few months ago, I think back end of last year. So you would hope that there would be lots of coalitions to defend the opponents where there does seem to be a dividing society between the West and the East. But you can only hope that that might be the direction of travel, if you can hope at all that there'd be, you hope that there's no conflict at all. But if there was going to be a conflict, you'd hope that those would be the dividing lines in order to support your Western allies and your partners. But I do think it still comes down to the fact that the technology and the intelligence services and the way in which we can have lasers now, not just bombs, those can be operated by a limited number of people. So we don't actually require necessarily the thousands upon thousands of military trained boots and guns than what we might have done previously.
You don't think so? Chip, is that right, Chip? Do we not really require the numbers that we, because of technology?
No, I think you still need numbers, you still need some mass. Now, there's no doubt that the British Army has taken a number of capability holidays which it needs to reinvest in. The four really are what they call fires, either artillery and long-range missiles, UAVs, drones, electronic warfare, and air defence, along with logistics, that is sustainability and availability, to ensure that you can fight 30, 40, 50 days. Those are the key things for the Army. But the most important thing for the UK, because we're in Ireland, is the Navy and the RAF. The RAF is part of the integrated air and missile defence system in NATO, and you can't separate the British Army from NATO, which has more vigour and purpose now than it had 2 years ago, which has added the 31st member with Finland, and is likely to add the 32nd member with Sweden. That will make NATO stronger, and that will be the outcome, I think, will be at the Washington summit, the 75th anniversary of this very successful alliance in this summer.
Yeah, but I still worry that we are literally relying on other things like NATO and stuff like that to protect ourselves, when we're seeing kind of how indecisive in some respects NATO have been, especially around the conflict with Ukraine. And also, what about the degeneration of our own supplies, Chip? Because we've given lots of things to Ukraine and, these may be old weapons, but we've depleted our own supplies.
Yes, we have, but you've got to remember about munitions. Munitions degrade, so if you're getting rid of overstock, that makes absolute sense. There's a degradation of both the explosive potential of munitions, which is why we use training stocks, and you keep an operational stockpile alongside that. It makes absolute sense to have done that. And it would be safer for us to degrade Russia than potentially having to fight a future war against them in whatever time frame, 10 years, 20 years. Because from a grand strategic perspective, Russia looks in terms of decades or centuries, not 1 year, 3 years or 5 years.
Yeah. I'm going to just come back to you, Charlie, again, though. What about in terms of recruitment of soldiers and things like that? Because even if we think we are slightly ready for war, the fact that the numbers are going down, who would want to be a soldier these days anyway? We don't look after our veterans. You go to the States, veterans are treated like almost, like absolute warriors and gods and legends. But here in this country, our veterans can't even get somewhere to live. In fact, we treat migrants better than our own veterans.
Well, I think that's absolutely right, because, it is a total disgrace in this country that if you're talking about a UK taxpayer giving up a hotel to someone that's broken into the country effectively illegally, and you're still seeing veterans, people who, you're absolutely right, have donned that uniform, that signed up to put their lives on the line to defend all of us as a nation, cannot get that accommodation. That is a disgrace in terms of a society that we are. I'm not saying for a second that we don't need the numbers. I'm just saying we need to have a discussion about, the technology versus the right kind of numbers. I do think, for what it's worth, 70,000 is too low. I think we do need to have probably 100,000 as a base. But I think you're absolutely right. We need to recruit more people. We need to recruit young people. We need to give people that sense of opportunity and hope wherever you're from, whether it's in the north or the south, that actually signing up to the UK Armed Forces, it is something to be proud of. We talk down too much, far too much, our armed services, just as we do all of our other great British institutions, because of wokery and all the other things that go on in society. So it's absolutely integral, I think, in schools, in society, people that might might have lost their way in life, if they can come back into society by joining the army or joining the armed forces in any capacity to serve their country, to give themselves that purpose, something to contribute to, and something to be proud of, I think would be a good thing.
Well, we get the sentiment, of course. It would be great. So, Ralph, I'm going to come to you then. Is this country, the UK, ready for war? What do you think?
I don't think so, because wars are ultimately won by will and resolve. And while I find those discussions about technology very interesting, I want to remind everyone in this round and your viewers that after 20 years in Afghanistan, we lost the war against the ragtag army with fertilizer bombs and Kalashnikovs. We see the same with the Houthis now in the Red Sea. As far as I recall correctly, British citizens have been taken hostage by Hamas. This is something nobody would have dared a couple of years ago.
OK, so in a word, then, I presume that's no. Stephen Pound, yes or no? Are we ready for war?
We will be, the closer it comes.
But are we ready for war?
At the moment, sadly, no.
No. Charlie, are we ready for war?
We have to be, and I think we just about are, but we can do more.
So yes or no?
Yes.
And Chip Chapman, are we ready for war?
NATO is yes.
Yes. Wow.
Good answer.
Wow, really. All right, well, listen, thank you so much.